Welcome to another edition of Curtis Jones Writing. If you are familiar with what I'm doing, I'm reading every chapter of every book I've written, and I've got 14 books written. Uh, I'm on my third book, which is entitled Imagination Stories That Say What If. I'm on chapter 6 in this book. Uh, you could go back and see all of the chapters I posted so far. If you get in a hurry and you can't wait to hear the next story, you can go to my webpage, which is curtis-jones-books.squarespace.com, and there's links there to take you to Amazon, where my books are sold, and they come in ebook or paperback. There's also links that'll take you to the Montgomery Public Library, where they posted one of the seminars that I did at their facility, and they wanted it available for people that were their patrons, but it's available on the internet nonetheless. So, but also that is available on my Facebook page. It's Curtis Jones author page on Facebook. It also has links to take you to the library or to my Amazon site where the books are sold. Uh, if you enjoy what I do, subscribe. Hit the subscribe button and then hit the little bell. I think it might be up that way. I'm not sure. But you could hit the bell for notifications, and every time I post something new, you would be notified of that. And if you like this, hit the like button and hit the share button so you could share it with your friends if you think they would enjoy this. I may be a little prejudiced, but I enjoy all the stories that I've written. I have lived a very peculiar life, and most of the stories have been true, unless I tell you they are fantasy. But this one, chapter 6, called The Curse, its whole title is The Curse That Blessed a Boy. And it's partly fiction and partly true. I had a very vivid imagination when I was younger. So let's get started with today's reading. The Curse. As a boy, I was born to a family that had a little girl already, and her name was Betty Jean. And the parents loved that little girl. They named me Eddie Dean. When Betty was 1 year old, I was born into the family. My dad was angry when I was born. You see, he didn't think that I was his child. But Daddy loved my little sister, Betty Jane. Although we didn't act, or he didn't act as though he liked me at all. My mother loved both my sister and me the same. Our mother did things with both my sister and me. Our daddy only played with my sister. He did not like me very much, and so he didn't play with me at all. This was a hard thing to deal with as I grew up, and it gave me a sense of little value. It was a curse I knew I had to bear, and Mom helped me through it. As time moved along, our family grew by three more little girls. They were Mary Joyce, Peggy Lucille, and Catherine Diane, who were called, and she was called Cat. My dad called Peggy Lucy. Our daddy loved the new little girls too, just as much as he loved Betty Jane. Our daddy still did not like me, but it was easier because he had to divide his attention between other children now. I played with Betty Jean because she was my favorite playmate. As my other little sisters became bigger, I also played with them. All of us became very good friends. We were all of us were very good friends. And we all played together until the time Betty Jean had to start school. When we played, Betty Jean was the boss because she was the oldest and everyone played what she wanted to play. We all played the games that she chose. We didn't know that we could choose games to play, so all of us children were very happy in the bliss of our ignorance. When we played, while things, bless of our ignorance when we played, while things remained the same with Betty Jean as the boss. When Betty went to school, I told the other girls that I was now the oldest and I would choose the games that we would play, but my other sisters would not play the games I selected. Instead, they played games that the next younger sister, Mary Joyce, wanted to play. If I did not play those games, I could not play with them. So I started to play all by myself more and more. Soon I played with my other sisters only once in a while. All my little sisters were still very happy, but I was becoming a little sadder each day. I didn't like the girl games very much, and so I had no one to play with. I learned to play games by myself because I felt isolated and I was quite unhappy. Sometimes my little sisters would try to play the games that little boys love to play, but they didn't like them very much either. And soon they would go play little girl games and leave me to myself and to my games. Sometimes Betty Jean would come home from school and tell all of us how much fun school was. She would tell us about all the other children at school and how they played and studied lessons. She would tell about the nice teacher she had and how they all got chocolate milk every afternoon for a snack. We all wanted to go to school, and even I wanted to go to school. On those days when our big sister would tell stories about her days at school, every one of us was excited for her to come home. We watched for her like a little dog would watch for their master, and with just as much glee as the dog would have too. We did this so that we could find out about school. Soon my time to go to school came, and I was afraid of the unknown. I worried that no one would like me. I thought, what if they treat me like daddy treats me? So I didn't want to go to school at all. My mother knew that I had to go to school, and so she tried to help me understand why I had to go. I really didn't understand, but I trusted my mama, and so I went. Things went well in school for the first month, and then the teacher had to give another little boy a spanking in front of the class. I became afraid of the teacher and decided that I did not want to go to school anymore. But my mother convinced me to keep going and not quit. One day, I had to go to the bathroom while I was in class, but was afraid to ask the teacher. And in just a little while, I wet my pants. The teacher walked by and saw what had happened, and she took me to the front of the class and talked to me. The teacher sent me home to change clothes. It was only 1 block to our house. I walked very slowly, and when I got home, I told my mother what had happened, and my mother helped me change and let me stay home the rest of that day. The next day, Mom went to school with me and had a long talk with my teacher. The teacher was kind after that, but the children I went to school with were not so kind, and they made me feel bad almost every day after that incident. When summer came, I soon forgot about the embarrassment of that day, but I never liked school again after that year. We moved to the country that summer, and I went to another school in the fall. This was a smaller school, and out and our school bus was a 1950 Ford station wagon that Mrs. Workman drove. She was our school cook. I think it was her car, but Mrs. Workman was very nice and we all liked her. After all, she fed us lunch every day. This school had outdoor restrooms called outhouses. They each had two holes in the boards that made up the seat in the outhouse. There was one outhouse for the boys and one for the girls. They were at the very outside of the school yard, next to each other. They didn't smell very good, but when you needed one, they were appreciated. While we lived there, we had dirt roads, and the country road grader came about once a month. When he came, he always pushed dirt into a pile on the sides of the road. I always played in that fresh dirt with my little toy cars. I watched for the grader so I could play in the fresh dirt because it was soft. And one late spring day, when he graded past, he turned out a strange little stone that looked like metal, but it was very light, and you hardly knew it was in your hand. It also had very high gloss to its surface. It was black on one side and dark gray on the other, and about the size of a credit card. That shininess is what caught my attention and drew me to it when the grader turned it up. I picked it up out of the dirt and polished it until it was glistening. I thought I had found a wonderful treasure. I kept this stone with me all the time and began to think of it as a good luck charm. I looked I took it to school, and all the other kids thought it was very cool too. I would never go anywhere without it. As much as I handled it, it still retained its high gloss. It became one of the items I regularly carried along with my comb and my pocket knife that Grandpa had given me for 1 penny, and and a badly worn grape knee high bottle cap for flipping for heads and tails. When I had to make a choice, I used that knee high bottle cap. The stone soon became just another thing I carried. When the weather was better, I began to explore the woods that ran down the hill behind our house to the highway about 2.5 miles away. You could just barely hear the trucks when the wind was just right. There were lots of woods to play in. I learned which were the best places to go. I discovered an almost perfect round boulder about 10 foot across and about 8 foot tall. The rock was a dark gray, darker than the other rocks around it. The surface of the stone was smooth to the touch and seemed as though it had been sanded by the weather. I thought this rock was the coolest place to play. There was a dead log lying from the hillside to the top of that old stone that had broken off just beyond the edge of the big boulder. I could walk across and stand on top of the rock, and that made it feel like a lookout tower. I didn't tell anyone else of this big stone. It was my private spot. I could go there when I was mad or hurt my feelings, or even if I just wanted to be alone. I let my sisters play with me at all the other play spots I had found over the hillside not far from the house, but not this one. It was my place. There was a small stone cave just deep enough to hide from the rain. The cave was more of a hollowed out spot, perhaps from a fallen tree many years before. There was an old road that had logs laid across it and stacks of stones on each side or each end of the thing to form a bridge over the creek that was dry unless it was raining. There was also the old holler log, big enough to sit in, but I would never show them the cool boulder. It was my spot, and I would not share it. Let's turn 2 pages. Let's back up and see. Would not share it for fear it might get stuck and I couldn't get it back. Oh, what's going on here? Oh, wait a minute. I turned too many pages. There we go. Dad came home one Friday evening and was kind of mean to all the kids, even the little girls. He went to work the next day, and after breakfast, I went to my boulder to play, feeling down because he had been mean to my sisters. I had carried some used lumber to the boulder to enhance the natural log bridge that crossed from the hill to the big rock. That and this made the walkway into a small boardwalk that was easier to cross. I didn't nail anything together. I just laid those long boards across with the log, and I had my bridge. I was sitting under the little bridge, and I was surprised to find a crack in this wonderful old rock because otherwise it was a very smooth look to it and it felt smooth. The stone looked finished, but the crack looked out of place. I was surprised I had never noticed it before. The opening from the crack was about 2 inches wide and about a quarter inch tall. I took my pocket knife out and it fit into the crack. The crack was deeper than my little penknife blade was long, and I couldn't reach the bottom. I picked up several sticks, and they wouldn't go into the crack. They were a little too thick to fit. As I was working on how to find the end of the crack, I forgot about my anger I had that brought me here that morning. I found some pieces of flintstone that were flat enough for the opening lying on the hillside behind me, and they almost fit the crack. And then I realized I had that flat stone in my pocket and I pulled it out. To my surprise, it was the same size as the crack. I slowly lifted my good luck stone to the opening in the boulder, and I was amazed that it slipped so easily into the crack, and I was careful not to push my good luck stone in too far for fear that I might not that it might get stuck and I couldn't get it back. As I slowly pushed the charm I had carried all these months into the crack, it never met any resistance. Soon my good luck charm reached what seemed like the bottom of the crack. The stone I had carried all this time began to glow ever so slightly, and I might not have even seen it if a cloud had not blocked the sun and made it even darker under the makeshift bridge. The charm had slipped into the opening about 3/4 of its length when it seemed to bottom out. The boulder itself also had a glow in the crack. I wondered how these two pieces of stone were made to glow. I quickly pulled out my good luck charm and examined it very closely. It didn't seem to have any unusual things about it at first glance. It was still shiny and black, but now there seemed to be a bigger color difference between the two sides. I wondered if I had the charm upside down when I had put it into the crack. I thought it fit so well, it looked as though it belonged there. I turned the lighter side up this time and slowly began to slide the charm into the opening again. It met with no resistance again, and the movement seemed smoother this time. The charm slowly slipped to the bottom of the crack and stopped with a slight bump. The light it emitted was brighter this time, and I could tell that the crack was indeed a slot for the charm I had been carrying. Just above the slot was an array of little light points that appeared and lighted up on the surface of the boulder. I was amazed at the sight and quickly pulled the charm out again. I put the charm into my pocket and ran home. I wanted to tell someone about it, but thought they might think I had just made it all up. I was so excited the whole day, I couldn't concentrate on anything else. I was barely able to eat my lunch, and I had to force myself to eat dinner. Tomorrow was church, and I wouldn't be able to go back then, and I had one more week of school. I realized I wouldn't be able to return for a whole week. I remember thinking, what if I had imagined it? I spent the whole week thinking about that amazing rock and what it could be. I thought about the good luck charm I had carried for this long, and that without it, I would never have found the grand boulder to be anything but a rock. That might, what might this unusual stone be? I thought to myself, it might be some magic wish machine, or it might be a door that goes to a secret place. It might even be some kind of space radio. What if I could talk to a kid on another planet? My mind raced with all kinds of possibilities. Finally, school was out for the summer, and I would have time to explore just what the boulder was. It took about half an hour to walk to where the stone was, so I needed time to get to it even before I could explore its secrets. I would go there on Saturday because mom had things she wanted done as soon as we were out of school. I knew mom would get tired of keeping us busy in less than a week. Then our time would be ours to use as we wish to use it. Finally, mom was tired of keeping us busy by Wednesday night, and I knew that Thursday was mine. When Thursday morning rolled around, I quickly downed my breakfast and asked Mom for a snack and a fill up of Kool-Aid in Dad's old water canteen because I wanted to go explore this morning and would probably be back about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Mom warned me to be careful and to come to her as soon as I got back. Well, I agreed, and I was off to the great stone that had occupied my thoughts. I was on my way by 8 a.m. It was a warm and cloudless day, and the sun felt good when it struck in the chill of the morning. I wound my way through the forest and came over the step hills as I worked my way down to the part of the mountain I wanted. The boulder was sitting or waiting for me, and I would find out just what it was today, I decided. When I reached the object of my quest, I sat down and sipped on the Kool-Aid and looked at it for a long time. I finally put the lid on the canteen and stepped up to the crack in my in this mystical boulder. I had carried a little folding stool with me to sit on as I tried to learn just what this mystery might be. I slowly put the shiny little rock into the crack with the lighter colored side up, and the glow came back to the opening. This time I pushed the small stone harder, and it seemed to slip in most of the way, with only a small piece of the charm sticking out. I thought to myself that was a good thing because I could still retrieve it if I needed to. And I was surprised at what happened next. Just above the opening appeared a set of lights which began to glow through the moss on the surface of this beautiful boulder. So I wiped off the moss and dust to reveal that it looked like a keyboard of some kind. It had the numbers from 1 to 0, and it had 5 more symbols below that. The first line contained the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The second line contained 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. The third line contained strange symbols. The first looked kind of like an ampersand. The second looked like the Egyptian symbol of some kind. The third was a misshapen X with some lines extending from it. The fourth was a shape like a mountain ridge hanging upside down. The last symbol was the most interesting one. It looked like a triangle with rays extending from the top point. I did not know what the symbols were or what they meant, but the last symbol looked like it did something by itself. I pressed the last symbol and the whole keypad changed. It now had many different symbols I couldn't even begin to explain. With a little fear and as much courage as I could muster, I pressed the first symbol. I heard sounds like a radio speaker, and it had static on the speaker. I could not see a speaker anywhere, but the sound was as clear as if set I had a set of earphones on. This is the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life. I waited to see if the sound would change or if I could hear anything else, but it never changed. I pressed the second, and then the third and the fourth, still just static. And I was waiting less time now between each button I pressed. When I got to the last button, the keypad returned to its first symbol, the first symbols that were on it. I pressed all the buttons on the original keypad, and the only one that changed anything was the last button on the bottom row. I decided whole that this whole boulder was some kind of a radio. I was going to work with what had worked, and I pressed the symbol of the triangle with the rays on top. I then pressed only the button on the first two rows and waited longer this time for each. And each time I would say, "Hello, is there anyone there?" When I pressed the bottom with the number 7, I heard a response from another young voice at the other end. He sounded much like me. I asked who he was, and he said he was Theodore and that he and his family lived on a world called Pandamaran. I told him I was Eddie and me and my family lived on a world called Earth. I went on to tell him about my sisters and how I liked to be alone and how I had found this great boulder and I was talking to him from it. He asked me if I was inside or outside of the OPET. I said, "What is an OPET?" He said it was a one person environmental transport, and we call them OPETS for short. I said I was standing by the side of a keypad on the outside of the OPET and talking to him. He told me I could get inside if I wanted to, and he would tell me how. I said I would very much like to, and how could I do that? He had me hold down two buttons at one time and then told me which button to press and in which order, and the great magic stone had a door indeed, and it opened by disappearing altogether. We were still able to talk even though I had changed the buttons on the keypad and opened the door. I looked into the OPET and it was just a hollow sphere of some with some kinds of padding all over the inside from the look of it, and I told Theodore. He told me you have to step inside to activate the OPET. When I stepped into the OPET, a seat that looked like a recliner formed in the center of the sphere. Theodore told me to sit in the seat and it would conform to my body size. When I sat down, a kind of helmet formed on my head and the recliner fit. Let me see if I can open this. 73. There we go. Fit me just right. I thought of Little Red Riding Hood. When the helmet formed, the seat also formed several buttons on the arm of the chair that were also lighted, that were green, yellow, and red. Also, a stick that looked like a hand grip of some kind. The hand grip also had buttons on it. Theodore asked if the things had I described had in fact formed because they were the controls of the OPET. I told him they had and that I didn't know how to operate the OPET. He told me that no one knows how to operate an OPET, but that the OPET knows what you want and it does that for you. I asked what the hand grip was for, and he said it allowed you to see and do things outside the OPET while it was in operation. Theodore then said, if you would like to go for a ride, push the green button and think about where you would like to go, and the OPET does everything else. If you want to return to the starting point, press the yellow button, and when it stops, press the red button, and the OPET reconfigures to what it was when you opened it. I thought about how simple that was, and that even I could do that. I told Theodore I would love to go for a ride, and when I thought about going into the air, the clouds go into the air where the clouds usually lived, the door just appeared and a kind of seatbelt fastened around me. I could feel some kind of movement, but I had no sound and heard no sound. I told Theodore the door closed and I felt it move. And he said, grab hold of the hand grip and put your thumb in the knob or on the knob just in front of it where the thumb rests. He said, with the little switch, I could see in every direction, and I grabbed hold of the hand grip and placed my thumb where Theodore had said, and the whole inside of the sphere was a TV screen. I could see everywhere. Theodore asked if I had seen anything interesting, and I said, there is my house. And as soon as I had said that, I was just over my own house and could see the other kids playing in the yard. I then thought of the swimming hole where we always went, and I was there. I could see everything that was there too. I thought of Pikes Peak, and I was there. I thought of Washington, D.C., and I was there. I thought of the Golden Gate Bridge, and I was there. I thought of the ocean, and I was there. It didn't seem to take any time to be where you thought you wanted to be. It just happened. I thought of London and Paris and of the pyramids in Egypt. Chili, just a minute. Uh, hey, there ain't nothing here but me. Did you see the OPET? Sorry. Uh, of London and of Paris, of the pyramids in Egypt, of the Alps, and many other wonderful places. I asked Theodore if we might run out of gas. And he said that the OPET didn't use gas, but the static electric in the atmosphere as a power source. He said the OPET could go anywhere in the planet's atmosphere, but could not leave the atmosphere. I thought of many places that day, and I was so engrossed that I lost track of time. I became hungry and I thought about home. I was there just over the yard, and the girls were still playing out in the front yard. I told Theodore that I had better get back before Mom got worried, and he said to press the yellow button and I would return to where I'd started. When the OPET got back, it settled into the same place it had been I before. As I felt the movement stop, I pressed the red button and the sphere changed back to what it looked like when I first opened it. The door just vanished and I walked outside and the door reformed. You could see nothing other than the big boulder. The bridge was still connected on top of the great stone and looked as though it had not even been disrupted. I picked up my little stool, which was still sitting by the keypad. I gathered the snacks and canteen and started back home. I thought I might be in trouble for being gone so long. When I went into the house, I went to Mom and reported that I was back, and she asked if I was all right because I had been gone for so little a time. I said I wanted to take a nap and went to my room and slept for most of the day. At supper, Mom asked me again if I was okay, and I said that I just got tired walking over the hill. I went to the boulder almost every week that summer. I had seen almost everything that there was to see that summer. Sometimes I would go to the old pet and just talk with Theodore and go no place. We became friends, and I enjoyed talking as much as the travel in the OPET. I told Theodore that school would start soon and we could not talk at least as much as we had this summer, and he understood. About a month before school started, a family moved in down the road from us. They had a little boy 1 year older than me, and we became friends. I would go visit him sometimes, and we would play all day. When school started, I made sure I got to ride beside him on the bus. I liked having a boy close to my age to play with, and I liked other kids at school too. When school started, I went over the hill less often, and one day when I went to the great boulder, it was just gone. I couldn't think of what had happened. I thought that someone had found the opet and took it. I didn't tell anyone about it because they would think that I had just made up the whole thing. I changed a little that school year because I had learned how to interact with others. I look back and realize that the opet may well have been the wonderful imaginations of a little boy starved for the love of another male. I got that from our new neighbors, new neighbor and his dad. I also learned to interact because of the other friends at school. What started out as a curse was in fact a blessing in wolf's clothing because I developed a wonderful imagination that year. It had stayed with me ever since. We should all realize that God could always turn bad into good if we let Him. Thank you for spending this time with me as we read this story. If you liked it, share it with your friends. All of the things I write are good for mixed company, and it's wholesome family entertainment, and it should be shared because many of the things in this world are so difficult that a little respite from it would be a wonderful thing to happen. Okay, the next chapter I will read is Reflections of Desire, and it's like this story. It's a little made up and a little fiction and a little fact. So I will do that the next time, and I hope you enjoyed this one. God bless you, keep you safe, and let you understand the wonders of what He's done for us. Goodbye.